Consecrated Women of Regnum Christi in Maryland. I'm originally from South Africa, so hopefully that answers the question about the accent and it won't be too distracting for you. Thank you for having us here. This is such a grace to be with all of you in this beautiful time of Advent with this beautiful topic of spiritual motherhood. The topic was kind of inspired by this beautiful image that we have over here on this easel and that each one of you has on your program. This beautiful, beautiful image of our Blessed Mother. And I thought it was interesting that Mary highlighted the line from the song, I have walked many moonless nights, because precisely what's so beautiful about this painting is Our Lady is contemplating the moon. And I think this image of her is one that we can contemplate this evening. Hopefully you can even each take a moment before you leave just to come and look at her peace, her serenity, her joy, her contemplation. That's kind of the goal for this evening. I think Faith was saying at the very beginning, if she'd been asked to give a talk on stress and anxiety, she would have felt more prepared, because maybe that's what many of you feel. But we want to be like Mary, the sister of Martha. Remember how Martha and Mary had Jesus in their home. They had put on a beautiful dinner, just like this evening. And Martha said to Jesus, "Tell my sister to come and help me." And he said, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and concerned about many things. Only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." So you have all chosen the better part to spend time with our Lord. And that's what Advent is. This one thing necessary is to prepare our heart for Jesus, right? It's not to have the perfectly decorated house, the perfect gift, the perfect dinner. You know, Mary brought up the whole topic of conflict. No conflicts. No, the one thing necessary this Advent is to prepare our heart for the Lord, like our Blessed Mother. We chose this image because in her hand, I don't know if you can see, she's holding a candle. So this is Advent by Candlelight, so we want to invite her into our heart and into our home and join her. We actually want to join her on her journey to Bethlehem. We want to say, "Mary, take me by the hand, please, in these last days and lead me to Bethlehem. I want to walk with you." Many of you have had your own children, and maybe some of you have your own daughters who have had their own children, and what a blessing it is to walk with a pregnant woman and accompany her in that moment. And we want to walk with our Blessed Mother in this time. So the topic for this talk is Mary's spiritual motherhood lived out in her surrender, the surrender of her mind and her will and her heart. And I feel like as Catholics, we have a pretty good understanding of surrender of the will. I feel like we talk a lot about, we have to let go and let God, or we shouldn't be so in control. We all want to be in control, and we talk a lot about letting go of our will, and we point to Jesus in Gethsemane where he said, "Father, not my will be done, but your will be done." I feel like that concept we kind of speak about a lot, but the concept of the surrender of the mind, the surrender of our understanding, I'm not sure if that is as spoken about. And this portrait for me is the perfect image of our Blessed Mother in the surrender of her understanding. The angel Gabriel had just appeared to her and told her that she would conceive of the Holy Spirit and that her child would be the Son of God. Can you imagine receiving a message like that? And back in those days, they didn't have pregnancy tests. She didn't have an OBGYN she could run off to and confirm this. All she had was the moon, the cycle of the moon, and that's how women knew if they were pregnant. And that's why she is looking at this moon saying, "God, like, what has just happened to me?" It was complete faith. It was a complete act of faith that she believed that she was pregnant. It was a total surrender of her mind and of her understanding. I mean, that does not make sense to say that the virgin will be with child. She was the only human being this has ever happened to, since before her and after her. And she had to bow before the mystery. She had to bow before the mystery. You know, and sometimes when we think of pride, we think of just a stubborn person, just a very strong-willed, stubborn person who doesn't, want to change their way of doing things. Well, sometimes the greatest pride can be the intellectual pride, the way we think about things. And we have to surrender in humility that our human mind cannot grasp everything. There is a mystery to God's plan that we bow before in wonder. And that is what our Blessed Mother is doing right here. She's saying, God, I surrender my mind. I do not understand. I do not understand, but I surrender. And there's a beautiful documentary called In the Heart of Texas. I won't go too much into it now, but if any of you want to watch it later, beautiful documentary about a mother in Texas who had a suffering with her little daughter. It was a deep sorrow, what happened, and she was questioning God. Why? Until one day she came to the point where she said, there is no reason good enough that God could give me for what happened to my little girl. There is no reason good enough that God could give me for what happened to my little girl. And I thought that was so profound for those of us, as Mary said, that carry within our hearts this strong faith. We believe in a loving God, but our hearts cry out when things don't make sense. And how can a loving God do this? And we have to surrender that in this life, there may actually never be a reason that God himself could even give you. But there was one woman who could even ask God himself, and that was our Blessed Mother. It was when her and Joseph lost Jesus in the temple. Can you imagine the anguish in the heart of Our Lady and Saint Joseph losing that precious child for 3 days? And what does she say when she finds him? She says, my son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been looking for you with great anxiety. She got to ask God. She actually got to ask God in the flesh, why? And Jesus said, why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? And the gospel goes on to say, and they did not understand. Even when God gave her the answer, they did not understand. And the next line says, she pondered all of these things in her heart. She went back to Nazareth and she pondered these things in her heart. When the mind cannot comprehend God's plan and mystery, the heart can ponder, as Mary so beautifully said, the heart can ponder and somehow give us the grace to bow before the mystery. So that's spiritual motherhood. That's spiritual motherhood where we bow before the mystery. We surrender the intellect in our own life and in those that we're guiding. Then secondly, there's the surrender of the will, which, like I said, I feel like we kind of have a better grasp on. I feel like a lot of talks are given on letting go of our self-control and giving God back the freedom that he gave us. As women and as mothers, I think your daily bread is surrendering your will. You can't even go to the bathroom in peace sometimes. It's just constant self-giving, constant surrendering of what I would rather do. But my husband needs me, my children need me, my friends need me. I surrender what I would want or prefer, and I surrender that to my daily duty. And we think of our Blessed Mother, what that must have been for her and Joseph when they realized God the Father was wanting them to have Jesus born in Bethlehem. Can you imagine Our Lady? I mean, the Son of God, all she would have wanted was to have had a home, beautiful linens, warm, her own home prepared. I mean, it's kind of basic, right? That a mom would want her newborn baby just to be taken care of. But God asked them to go to Bethlehem. And God asked that that inn not have a vacancy. And God asked that they surrender how they would have wanted the birth of Jesus to have been, and accept that the Son of God, who had left heaven to come to earth, would be born in a shepherd's cave, laid out in a manger that the animals would eat out of. She had to completely surrender her will of how she would have wanted that moment to have been. So that's the second way we live our spiritual motherhood, this total surrender of our will. And how did Jesus learn to say those words in Gethsemane? Father, not my will, but yours be done. But from her, from the mother that he saw from the beginning, surrendering to the Father. And then lastly, possibly the most difficult of all, is the surrender of the heart. And the Catechism says so beautifully that the heart is just the deepest part of who we are. For the Jewish people, the word heart was so full. It meant everything. Mind, soul, spirit, heart. It's the deepest core of who we are. And these faculties of mind and will and heart are what separate us from the animals and the rest of creation. We are made in God's image and likeness, and that is because we have a mind and a will and a heart. And this mind, this intellect, was darkened by sin, the original sin. Our will was weakened by original sin, and our hearts were broken. And that's why we need Jesus to come. And that's why we thank Our Lady for saying yes to bring him, so that our intellects can be lightened again, and our wills can be strengthened, and our hearts can be healed. So this surrendering of the of the heart is sometimes the most difficult because it's the most mysterious. And we see Our Lady at the foot of the cross. We see our Blessed Mother having to watch her son be crucified. She had to watch this terrible agony and this terrible torture. And as Mary has said, her and I are not physical mothers. For those of you who are physical mothers, you can just identify even more with your child suffering. I'm sure any mother would want to say, I will take those nails out of those hands and out of his feet and nail me to the cross. But dear God, don't have me watch my child die like this in front of me. But that is what God asked. And when that sword that the soldier pierced Jesus' heart with pierced Jesus' physical heart, that sword pierced the heart of Our Lady, her heart and her soul. Because years before, when Jesus was just a little baby and she presented him in the temple, Simeon said, this child will be a sign of contradiction, and you yourself a sword will pierce. And that's why our Blessed Mother is she's the Queen of Martyrs. She never died physically, but her soul died with Jesus. She was pierced at the foot of the cross. And I think this is the ultimate peak of spiritual motherhood. And it's spiritual because all of us who stand at the foot of the cross of somebody who is suffering, whether it's our physical child or somebody we accompany, Our Lady became the mother of the church on Calvary. Jesus said, women, behold your son. And her offering to God of her child and her acceptance gave birth to the church. And that is probably the greatest expression of surrender. So we can ask her for this beautiful grace. We can say, Mary, help me to be a spiritual mother like you. Help me to stand at the foot of those that I love and that I accompany, knowing that I can't take them down from their cross. I can't. I can just offer my heart and accompany them. One last example of the surrendering of her heart. I can imagine when that angel came and told her she was going to conceive and bear Jesus. I'm sure it weighed on her, Joseph, and what will he do, and will he leave me? And I don't know if any of you have watched the movie Mary of Nazareth. That's another good recommendation for these days leading up to Christmas. It's one of my favorite movies, Mary of Nazareth. And in this movie, which of course we know there's so many different interpretations of this whole scene of Joseph and Mary and how did that all happen. But in this movie's particular interpretation, they have Joseph very distressed and kind of discerning if he should leave Our Lady. So she's living with her mom, and of course her parents are worried, and her mother says to her, well, Mary, maybe we should move to another town and you can find another good man who will just accept you. And Mary, in that moment, she's just sitting down and she has now her big belly, and she's just like with this radiant smile, just like stroking her belly. And she said, you know, Mother, that is wise. You are wise. But she said, the angel told me only two things: to name the baby Jesus and to rejoice. To name the baby Jesus and to rejoice. And in that moment, Joseph just comes running in and just falls at the feet of Mary and explains about his dream and how in awe he is, and please, can she come into his home, and can he be the father of their child? So that's just to highlight that the surrender of the heart is not always going to end in the piercing, like the foot of Calvary. She surrendered her heart, and there was this beautiful, joyful ending with Joseph returning. And God can choose either ending, right? That's what surrender is about. It's not saying, I want the happy ending or the sad ending. It's, God, I want your ending. That's what surrender is. So we have a little gift for you. This is from our community to you, this booklet. It's the Surrender Novena. Hopefully each one of you has one at your spot. Maybe you've done this before. I've noticed it's becoming quite popular. And this novena was given to a priest in Italy, Don Delindo. He was a contemporary of Saint Padre Pio, very holy man. Jesus revealed this novena to him. A novena, maybe for those of you who don't know, is a 9-day prayer in preparation for a very special feast day. So you could be doing a 9-day novena in preparation, for the Feast of the Assumption, or for Easter, or for the Divine Mercy. So I would like to invite all of you, if you would like to do this novena leading up to Christmas Day. And it starts tomorrow. If you want to start, there's 9 days. We'll end on the 24th. Maybe we could all do it together, praying for each other's intentions. Also, because we know building the habit of prayer is a habit. So maybe if you have 9 days, it'll, make a good habit. So this is just a beautiful, beautiful way of teaching us how do we do the surrender. It explains it much more beautifully than I ever could. So hopefully you can have 9 days to contemplate the way we can surrender. But I just invite you now to turn to day 9. It's the very last day. It's just a very brief summary. And Jesus says, do not be afraid. I will take care of this. And by humbling yourself, you will bless my name. 1,000 prayers are not worth a single act of surrender. Remember that well. No novena is more effective than this. So, Blessed Mother, we ask you to take us by the hand. We ask you to please take each of the women here this evening by the hand and lead us to Bethlehem. And we ask, Mary, that you give us this incredible grace of surrender of our mind and of our will and of our heart. Thank you.